Mildest. We're here at South Point Arena, World Series of Team Roping, and I'm fortunate to have a good friend, Total Feeds, Ken McNabb, stop by. Normally, Ken and I are on the road at the horse shows,
Right.
and now we're at the rodeo, the World Series of Team Roping and the NFR. What brings you to town?
Well, you really don't need a reason when the NFR is on to come to Vegas.
Right.
But we've got some meetings this week with some potential television opportunities, so we just sort of decided why not combine the trip and make it a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you're any more of a drinker or gambler than I am, though.
No, I work too hard for my money to willingly give it away.
Yeah,
Or I suppose I should say willingly lose it. I don't mind giving it away. I don't want to lose it.
yeah. It's not charity.
No.
No, I spend. This is my second home. And certainly, every December, I spend about 2.5 weeks here. With all the events we cover and all the time that I have to put into them. And I'm not really a Vegas person. Not the target demographic, if you will.
Yeah, me either. And we brought our family and some friends, and it isn't exactly where you. It's not Disney.
No.
I mean. No. But there's so much going on right now that is in common with how we live every day.
Absolutely.
That it's a fun time to be here. There's lots of fun things to do. You don't have to go sit at the table and throw away your life savings to have lots of things to enjoy. You can be over here during the day, watch the team roping.
Yes.
There's just plenty of things to do for fun.
Yeah, and even with the unfortunate cancellation of some of the events due to the virus outbreak, we still have several going on. So the World Series team roping here, we've got 3 arenas of roping going. The Patriot is going on out at Horseman's Park on the east side of town, and Vegas Toughest on the north end of Las Vegas for the 19 and under, and that is still going. There's stuff for all ages here, plus unbelievable shopping, especially if you're in the Western world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now this is the way I sold it to my wife is you can Christmas shop the whole time I'm in meetings.
100%.
There's so much going on, and I personally, it was sort of selfish because if she's Christmas shopping for me, I'd like her to do it in these buildings.
Right, because this is the stuff you want.
This is the stuff I want. It's really fun. You walk through the booths, and there's just quality everywhere you look at, and great products, great people. It's a fun place.
And it's one thing when we're back home in Texas, we can go run over our local Teskey's or Boot Barn or somewhere, but everybody, all of those people, all the stores from everywhere around the country within our Western industry come here to Las Vegas. It's all in one place.
Yeah, we can come in here and in one afternoon see what would take days to actually go see.
Yeah, and the bulk of our people are rural people, so they're not going to have access to that kind of stuff.
Well, and for you guys, especially here, we were commenting earlier, the people that are in this building are horse people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're feeding horses.
Yes.
So for you, it's a very target-rich environment.
Yes. Horses everywhere. In fact, I joke that it's cheaper to put your horse in a hotel room than a stall in Las Vegas this time of year.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to stall horses here during the NFR?
I have not. I have never been to one of these NFR sales, but it's got to be a competitive market.
Did you do any roping?
I do. Yeah. I am not someone. I tell people I'm a frustrated roper. I've roped all my life. One of my favorite stories. My dad and I were talking to a farrier, and the farrier was 59 years old.
Yeah.
And he told us, he said, I shod my first horse when I was 9. And so he said, I've been shoeing horses for 50 years. And the conversation ended, and he went on his way. And I looked at my dad, and I said, if I've ever been doing something for 50 years and I'm no better the first day or the last day than I was the first day, somebody stopped me.
Yeah.
Dad said, let me save you a lot of time. Give me your rope now. So, I rope a lot, but I would never want to mislead anyone into thinking that I was a great roper. My sons are both really good ropers. Okay. And I can say that I taught them the basics, and they ran with it from there. I love to rope, but I'm not very competitive.
There's value in that, and I've tried to teach this to people. I have 2 guitars at home that I'm terrible at. I've been trying to play guitar since I was a kid, and I've never figured it out. I still like them, and I think it's okay to have. In fact, it's better than okay. I think it's healthy to have some outlets, some hobbies of things you're not necessarily good at, but you enjoy doing.
That's right. I rope 100% for utility and for fun.
Yeah.
When I'm out and about at home, I need to rope. And so I rope good enough not to run animals to death. I get them caught.
Okay.
In fact, that's during branding season, that's one of the things I tell people.
Yeah.
My sons are ropers, I'm a catcher. I drag calves to the fire as fast as anybody. It's just not fun to watch me do it. It's fun to watch them. They throw some really cool loop from 25 feet away. I drop it right here and go.
Yeah.
And it's just the difference in our roping. I catch, they rope.
Yeah, and so, do you have, your life has been all about work, and you grew up in that community, which I understand as good as anybody. My dad's 82, and he's here working
Right.
the whole time.
The whole time.
And that's been my example. But do you have any outside hobbies outside of working with horses?
So, I mean, like I said, I love to rope. I would tell people that I enjoy the outdoors in almost any way. I'm a very, I don't want to overstretch this, but I'm a good downhill skier. I've downhill skied all my life, and I love it.
Wow.
And so, I've taught my family, and we downhill ski. And that's something that I look forward to a lot. Pretty much my hobbies involve the outdoors. I like getting out and doing things and being active. And so I don't swim, can't swim. I sink like a rock, but I love boats. I love being on boats or jet skis. You will never find me on a body of water without my life vest because I know I sink.
Yeah.
But I like to get out and be out and doing things.
So you like to jet ski, but you can't swim.
Can't swim a lick. I mean, I can swim the length of this booth, and I tell people that when I hit bottom, I run like heck. But most of my swimming is done under because I'm sinking.
Yeah.
And so I can propel myself to get air, and then I'm sinking again and propelling myself forward as much as I can. And then when I'm running out of air, I go back to the surface for air. But that's what my swimming looks like. It's not that I don't know how; it's that I sink.
Wow.
So the Navy has a term for it. It's anti-buoyant. And when we got married, my wife was like, "Oh, I can teach anybody to swim."
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, can't you do the dead man's float?" I said, "Yeah, on the bottom." And she's like, "Well, anybody can do the back float." And I said, "Yeah, I can too, on the bottom."
Yeah.
That's, most people hold their breath and they can stay there. I hold my breath and just keep going down. So, yeah.
Wow.
That's fun.
Well, they had to give me swimming lessons apparently when I was 2 years old because I kept jumping in the pool.
Yeah.
And I've swam my whole life, but I worked on a fishing boat in Alaska when I was a young man.
Yeah.
So I don't love boats the way some people do anymore. That kind of beat it out of me.
Right. You were on one enough.
Yeah, where there was no escape, and we worked hard, and it was
a fishing
brutal.
boat is not. That's not something you do for enjoyment. That's a job, and it's a big job. It's a hard job.
There's zero enjoyment.
Right.
It was about that paycheck at the end of the season.
Well, and most of the fishing season is not. You're not deep sea fishing off the Bahamas.
Right. I was in Alaska.
You're in Alaska. It's cold.
Yep.
It's wet.
Yep.
I spent every summer in Alaska as a kid growing up.
You did?
Yeah. Yep.
What were you doing in Alaska?
My dad has done more things, and he just really has lived his whole life with if you dream it, do it.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to have a kids camp in Alaska. And so when I was 13, we started a summer camp in Alaska, and we built a very rustic log camp compound, and he would take troubled inner city kids from California and Florida, and mostly California, coastal regions that were getting in trouble, and we would go to Alaska for the summer.
Wow.
And the same group of kids would be with us the whole time. We drove from Wyoming to Alaska in school buses, had the camp all summer, and then drove back. So the drive was a big part of the entire adventure.
Good Lord. On the Elcan?
On the Elcan, yep. Yeah, I've gone over the Elcan.
In a school bus?
In a school bus.
I've heard that's hard in the best vehicle.
It's not as bad. I took my wife over it a couple of years ago. It's not as bad now as it used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be pretty rugged.
Yeah.
But today it's, there's still long stretches of gravel. There always will be because of the permafrost.
Yeah.
But,
right.
And there's long stretches of nobody, but the road conditions are much better than they used to be. But we did that a lot. And Alaska is, it's a beautiful place in the summer. You've been there.
Yep.
But what I started to say is it's not the Bahamas.
No.
It's cold and it's wet.
Yes.
Even in the summer, it can be cold and wet.
We were taught that we had to kick our boots off as fast as we could if we got in the water, and we had 2 minutes before the hypothermia would set in and start freezing our muscles.
Wow.
So we had to kick our boots off because they'll pull you under. Yep. And then try to put yourself in the dead man's float so the boat can get to you. So we had to, it was brutal.
You had to train to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's very likely going to happen on a fishing boat.
Yep.
The odds are it could happen.
Oh yeah, it does happen.
Yeah. So
I went over. I got we were feeding our net out the back of the boat, and I was in the very back, and my mate was next to me, and we feed it out of these big 1-ton totes into the water, and the captain's way up in the front of the boat just hauling butt, because that's how it leads it out. And I looked down and I realized I had stepped in my coil. One of my coils, I was stepping in the loop, and I looked down just, it's like a bad movie, just in time to see it wrap around my ankle, and over I went. Luckily, the guy I was with had an iron grip, and I reached out and I felt him grab my wrist, and I wiggled it loose. I was already going into the water, being pulled down by the lead line, and he got me back. But that was close.
That's kind of as close as it comes to really being fatal.
Yeah, it was like having an anchor on your leg. So
yeah, you go in that water with that lead line around your leg.
I was going.
You were toast.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's really interesting the different backgrounds that the horse industry brings.
Yeah,
and I think we see a lot of retired law enforcement that are into horses, and
absolutely.
I think the mildest, and I don't mean this in any way negative, I mean it very positive, but I think the mildest natured retired grandmother in the world that has horses is an adrenaline junkie. They might not think they are,
right?
But if your grandma has horses, she's an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
And if your grandpa has horses, he's an adrenaline junkie. And those are the type of people who end up riding, right? I mean, when you have a job, and yes, it was a job, but you chose a job where you could be jerked by the leg overboard and drowned. Yeah. Like you chose that. Wow, that's what I want to do this year.
I volunteered.
Yeah, I'm going to go nearly kill myself. You have to have, that's the nature of the people we have in this industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you can talk to someone who's not in the horse industry at all, and I just don't understand that. But I bet if you took someone who was a hang glider, who had never been around a horse, and indoctrinate them into the horse industry, it wouldn't take very long, and they'd be like, oh yeah, this is right up my alley. Parachuters, yeah, this is right up my alley. So it's interesting, all the different backgrounds we have that come together and make an industry, and we magnify it with the cowboy, and the whole ranch setting and rodeo is sort of what we see as the icon of adrenaline.
Yeah.
But it's no different for a guy that's jumping 6-foot fences.
I had never thought about that, Ken, and I don't think you're wrong. Why does it work out that? What is it about horses? I think you're right.
It's the adrenaline. It's two things. It's the always potential adrenaline rush, and then the ability to have something that cares about you while you care about it when the adrenaline rush is over. Because even people who like adrenaline,
Yes.
there has to be a way out of it.
Yes.
In all the work that I've done with both active and non-active duty armed forces, both in active duty situations and then in non-active duty and therapy situations, having that horse's nature to come back to when it's over is so therapeutic.
Yeah.
You know, not unlike a dog,
Right.
but different in that this animal's big enough to cause you bodily harm or to offer you support.
That's very interesting, and there's a difference in dogs. Yeah, I was so attached to my dogs, so attached. It was an unbelievable emotional bond, but they're also they seem very dependent. A dog versus a horse. A horse is not just. I just don't get that sense that the horse needs me as much as the dog does. But
Right.
But the horse reads a human. They read a human. I can see it. I can see it out here. I can see who likes their horses and which horses like their riders.
Right. Oh, we were talking about it on the way over here this morning, and so I have a young man with us that's a really good friend of mine, and Austin's a great roper. And so I said to him, you know, we're in Vegas. There's team ropers everywhere, and we're coming here, and so I said, Austin, if you could rope with anybody in the world right now, you rope with anybody, who would you rope with? And he said, he thought about it for a minute, and he named several names. And then he came down and he said, you know, I think if I could just choose any roper to learn from right now, it would be Trevor Brazil. And I said, all right, why? I mean, there's some obvious reasons why.
Yeah.
He said, well, the obvious reasons are he's actually a phenomenal roper in any venue, and he used all of the competitive venues in order to win world titles, in all-around titles. He said he's a calf, you know, calf ropes, team ropes, steer ropes, all the above. But he said, you know, the next thing that I think is more important is that he seems to be a good person. And then he said, and then the last thing, and this is what you're talking about, he said the last thing is, you know, he likes his horses. Now, I don't know Trevor. I've never met him. I would agree from watching it that that's true. But that's, to this young man, that was what he saw as the most important trait of all of it, really, was he actually likes his horses. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a dog... I just read an incredible book, The Cruelest Mile. If you have not read The Cruelest Mile, you should read The Cruelest Mile. It's the story of the Nome, Alaska serum run during the diphtheria outbreak of 1925.
Okay.
So Disney made it and called it Balto. Balto was not the dog that did the most. The dog that did the most, actually, was a dog called Togo, who did the most miles. But anyways, they talk a lot about that dog-human relationship. And I think when you see dogs, they are very dependent on the people. They don't have to. We see wild dogs.
Yep.
But a wild dog is missing something. He's missing the human he should be with. A wild horse is not missing anything.
Yeah.
Wild horse is a very complete animal.
Yeah.
He's not missing something. Now, he gladly will give up that wild nature to immediately become faithful to a person. Right out of high school, I was training a bunch of horses, and I was training a bunch of BLM horses, and my brother and I. And so we'd go to adoptions and set out flyers on all the windows to get people to bring us horses.
Yeah.
Anything to get business. And so during that process, we adopted this mare. She was super wild. Really, really was. Of all the wild horses I've ever worked, this mare was really dedicated to staying wild. And so eventually she made the change, and she flipped and became a really great horse. When she made that flip, we ended up running a cow camp, my brother and I, back on the range she came off of. And during the night in the fall, a big storm came up, and he says blew the gate open. I think maybe he left the gate open. I don't know. Next morning, all the horses are out, gone. And we're on her home range in the McCullough Peaks there, just east of Cody. And so we don't have a horse, we don't have a car, we're kind of stuck, it's cold and windy, and so we talked about it, and he said, I'm going to go call for her. She was his horse at the time. He said, I'm going to go call. And so he went out, shook a bucket, and that black mare is the only horse to come back. All of the domestic horses stayed out there. But that black mare had realized life was better with him than it was out there on her own. So they make that change, but they don't have to make it. They're very complete without us. They're, in fact, wild horses are the most successful wildlife of a bigger grazing nature. Okay, so if we take rabbits, they prolificate much faster. Canadian geese, those are grazing animals. But when we talk about larger grazing animals, the wild horse reproduces faster in the wild than elk or moose or buffalo. He reproduces faster than mule deer. The only thing that catches him is white-tailed deer in Midwestern areas. The wild horse doesn't need us, but he willingly gives to us. And I think that's where you see that connection with people, because they find that horse is willing to give them so much that they wouldn't naturally have otherwise.
Can you think of some standout success stories that people have had with Mustangs where they bonded?
I mean, look at Bobby Kerr.
Well,
Bobby Kerr's whole career in the last 15 years, you know, Bobby was a great hand for his life. But we all got to know Bobby Kerr in the last 15 years 100% because of his work with the American Mustangs. That's 100% how we got to know Bobby Kerr. So, you know, there's so many stories that are old that go back to stories that Mustangs did and things that Mustangs did that are amazing. But I think in today's era, in this era, Bobby would have to be the standout. You know, I'm sure there's many more I'm missing, but
yeah, we are all going to miss Bobby for a variety of reasons. And we had a wonderful memorial for him, celebration of life in Fort Worth, and then had another one here at South Point.
That
was amazing.
We can get kind of stuck up over the bloodlines on our horses.
Oh, certainly.
You know, I mean, we raise registered quarter horses. We like them.
Right in this arena.
Yes, bloodlines are all important to people, but the truth is, there's no American breed today that's running around that's an American breed that doesn't pack Mustang blood in their heritage. That's the, you know, if they call them an American Tennessee Walker, standard bred, I don't care. Whatever it is, they trace back to wild horses at some point in their past. And I think one of the quotes that this is one of those things you can't, it's a controversial statement I'm about to make. And you can't prove it one way or the other. But modern history tells us that the wild horse came here with Cortez. Okay? Quanah Parker said, nonsense. Quanah Parker said, you're trying to tell me that in 300 years, Cortez's 15 horses populated the entire West and created the greatest light horse cavalries the world had ever known. Well, Quanah Parker had more spoken history than we have recorded of what had happened before that statement, before he made that statement. You know, the Comanche had been keeping track of that for a long, long time. I think the horses were here a long time before Cortez. I don't think that, so all of those breeds that we look at, they have all of that heritage behind them. I don't care if it's Kentucky Mountain Horse, I don't care if it's American Quarter Horse, Appaloosa, Paints. Those are the obvious ones.
Right.
That black mare I was telling you the story of, absolutely gated. Absolutely gated. That mare was so fun to ride because she traveled in an incredibly smooth foxtrot. There's no bloodlines to prove that.
Right.
So, you know, I think there's so much that we owe them, even though I raise quarter horses, love them every day, and haven't owned a Mustang in years.
Yeah.
But we sure owe them a lot.
Yeah, it's funny. The horse doesn't originate here. You know, it's from Asia, but it's such an American thing for us. It's such part of our history.
Right. You don't have America without horses.
No.
Well, I mean, Paul Revere didn't jog. This is not marathon.
Regardless of what culture in America you're talking about, we all have the history with the horse.
And I think, you know, to Quanah Parker's belief and mine, I parallel his belief. When they came over on the land bridge, there's no reason they didn't bring some with them.
Right.
You know, or there's no reason they didn't come on their own. You know, but you're right. I don't think there's maybe the Irish, but I don't really think the Arabians. There's not very many countries in the world that have as much of a relationship throughout society with horses as America does.
Yeah.
You know, certainly the Arabians did.
Yeah.
But not very many countries. I mean, Europe was not peopled with horse people. So that's one of the things I tell people. Imagine coming over from England.
Yeah.
And you were a limestone miner.
Yeah.
And you get a team in St. Joseph and you don't even know what a horse is, and you're headed for California for the gold fields. And so many millions of horses went west. How good do you think those teams were? Our pioneer forefathers had to just be so indomitable.
Yeah, there's a story. I'm one of the record keepers of my family history. I've traced all branches of my family back 300-400 years. There's a story of my great-grandfather leading a team of oxen from Iowa to the North Dakota Territory. The Dakota Territories before it was North Dakota. You know, laying the foundation for my mom's family.
Yeah.
He was by himself. He'd split up from the family and went through hostile territory at the time, certainly.
Right.
So, yeah, like, and I think about my dad's grandfather he and his twin brother and their siblings were orphaned at age 10.
Wow.
And they had to go to work, and they ended up in the trenches in Germany in World War I. And his other grandmother lived in a sod hut, you know, and my dad lived in a one-room farmhouse with no electricity or running water. I mean, I'm not that tough.
We've talked about that.
If I don't have Wi-Fi, I get crabby.
Yeah. I mean, they just were different. You know, they were a different breed of people. Times bred a different type of people. They needed a different type of people.
Yes.
But if he left the east, headed for the Dakotas, with a team of oxen, I mean, 12 miles a day max.
I feel like he felt like he didn't have a choice, and that's what he was going to do.
Yeah. And you read those old journals. This is one of the things I love history, and I especially love American history.
Yeah.
But you read those old journals of the pioneers going west, and they literally would spend all day trying to go 100 yards. Now, in my mind, I'm like, are you nuts? Like, just wait. This ground is going to dry out, and a week from now, the ground will be dry, and you can just go.
Yeah.
But they were so driven that they spent all day to camp tonight within walking distance of where they camped last night. Easy walking distance of where they camped last night.
Right.
But it was that spirit that drove them and made this country what it is, honestly. I mean, we ride on the shoulders of an incredible, mighty people. I
like to say we're all the survivors.
Right.
Everybody in this room. We're all the survivors.
That's exactly true. Exactly true.
So, you know, I encourage people to be grateful every day for the smallest things, because it's very healthy, and it reminds you. Like, just be grateful for even the smallest things in your life.
Yeah.
start with that. If you're not grateful enough, start with the smallest thing you can think of.
We have, so much in this country to be grateful for.
Yeah.
There's just, I don't know where you would, when you say start with the smallest thing, my dad always said to us as kids, what modern convenience do you want to live without? Or what one do you not want to live without? Which one do you not want to lose? Well, we would sit down, and of course, as teenagers, like, a car, an airplane. My dad was like, what about hot water? What about hot water?
How far could you go without hot water?
Right. And that's a modern convenience that your great-grandpa didn't have.
No.
Headed from the east to the Dakotas. That wasn't there. And so when you're being thankful for the little things, it's the little things.
Even my parents, they used an outhouse.
Yeah.
My parents.
Yeah. That wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't. One of the humorous stories my dad tells, my grandpa wouldn't put indoor plumbing in the farmhouse. And so Dad was 10 before they got indoor plumbing, and they lived in a rural area, but close to town. They were Midwestern Michigan. It wasn't like they weren't at the bottom end of nowhere. There was electricity through the community. Grandpa just didn't want to put plumbing in the house.
Yeah.
And he come home one day, and the fire department was there, and they were putting out the fire where Grandma had lit the outhouse on fire. She just burned it down, and that's how they got indoor plumbing. So, but when you think about it, your parents, your dad and my dad are almost the same age. Your dad's a year older than my dad.
Yeah.
So, honestly, you're looking at, it wasn't that long ago that they were using an outhouse.
Yeah.
That wasn't that long ago.
No, and at the time they were born in 43 and 44, and my dad's uncles, my mom's uncles, and her brother were all serving in World War II. Her mother at that time, my grandmother had 4 brothers and a son serving over there.
Wow.
Now they came back with a lot of knowledge of the world.
Yes.
And Eddie Preifert talks about that. His grandfather served in the Navy and saw all the machinery. And he said, the way he puts it is, he came home, he left in the 1800s and came home in the 1940s. And that's when he started learning, using his skills, and he started welding and built the first panel and first chute. Yeah. And that's what started Preifert.
And I honestly think there's a lot to be said for that in our whole industry, in our whole society, honestly. We changed. World War II ushered in a new era, for sure. When they went to war, people were farming with horses, still some.
Oh, yeah.
When the war was over, the tractor was here.
Yeah.
There wasn't very many people. And there was holdouts, for sure. Our little community has lots of pictures of people still hauling sugar beets in the 50s with teams, but it was pretty rare around the country. That was pretty rare. There was little spots that didn't have the wealth to come along.
Yeah.
But pretty rare for sure.
My dad grew up with a pair of draft horses. Yeah. On his grandpa's farm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was, there was a lot of good in that. That was one of the things I said about COVID. As bad as COVID was, everybody went and bought chickens.
Yeah.
And they put them in their backyard. And they got closer to their food supply. Yeah. And that's a good thing. Yeah. That's a good thing for people to understand how hard it is to survive. It just breeds better people. It just does. Easy times breed weaker people, and we need, the world needs to keep breeding better people. We look at as livestock producers, we are not trying to weaken our gene pools. We're constantly trying to strengthen our gene pools and breed better animals, and yet as humans, we keep getting further and further from the things that make us strong. Yeah. And thank God for the gym. We all go to the gym. I don't go as often as I should, but we all go to the gym. But it's good for us to have something that naturally drags us back to where your dad grew up. That's why your dad's 82 and excited about his newest projects.
Yeah.
Because it created a strong person.
He's, he goes to physical therapy every week and works out. He comes home and tells us the new weight that, they moved him up to on the different machines and stuff.
Yeah.
When he raised a couple of athletes. My brother and I were in 3 sports a year. We worked out all the time. But, now he's 80 and like, oh yeah. It reminds me, I'm like, yeah, I need to go to the gym.
Gotta get back to the gym.
My dad's going to the gym.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's amazing. We have that generation to be a guiding light for us.
Yep.
And to drag us along, and it's good for us.
Yep.
And we need to be the same for the next generation, for sure.
You remember your humanity. Remember you're part of a bigger machine, part of this planet.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
participate.
And really seriously, do we try to bring it? Do we try to make it better? And sometimes we try to make it so much better for the next generation that that's part of the problem.
Yep.
We actually make it too easy. But we need to make it better in general, not just easier.
And I had a therapist teach me this one day, because I've always had the instinct to help people automatically, and she said, don't take their opportunity to learn away from them.
I tell, at my clinics, I tell people, you're going to become frustrated and you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
And you're going to think I'm ignoring you.
Yeah.
And I want you to know I'm not ignoring you, and I'm okay with you struggling. And the moment that I think the struggle is going to become greater than the potential for success, I will step in and help you. But if I have given you the answers and you're just struggling to figure out how to use them, that's okay. Struggle is where the answer comes from.
Yes.
If I just do it for you, that's all I did was do it for you.
Yes.
I need you to go through the struggle to figure out how to learn to do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you take that struggle away, you're just doing it for them. And that's the same. I don't care if, when I was a kid, my dad was my math teacher. They ran a private boarding school, and so my dad was my math teacher. And I remember in about 4th grade, I was telling him, I can't do this. I can't do this. And Dad looked at me and he said, it's not that you can't, it's that you don't want to. You don't want me to help you. You want me to do it for you. And I'm not going to do that. And I remember feeling totally abandoned. But today...
Because they're thinking, you're exactly right.
Right. How could you abandon me to this?
Do it for me.
Today, I'm very fast with numbers. I'm very... I'm not going to win any calculus contest, but I'm very fast with numbers, and I make a living keeping numbers in my head and moving them. And I only do that because he went back there and made me struggle.
Yeah.
The struggle is good for you.
And you learned it.
Right.
The rewiring happened.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. You regroove the brain, and the struggling happened, and it's good for you. And that's,
That frustration is the pain of your brain rewiring itself.
Right.
Yeah. It's doing it as fast as it can.
Yep. I'm really blessed because I have so many great young people around me.
Yeah.
And they remind me, it's easy when you reach a certain stage in life where you're like, oh, it's going pretty good.
Yeah.
And you're maybe not as hungry as you were a few years ago. And you're looking at things that are successfully working, and you have some successes going, and it's easy to take your foot off the gas pedal.
Oh yeah.
And it's so much fun because I have so many great young people around me all the time.
Yeah.
Partly because of my sons, they bring a lot of great people in, and then just because I have great interns and whatnot. But I see that hunger in them, and that willingness to be frustrated and to struggle. And it reminds me to challenge myself to reach new heights, because the struggle is good for us.
Yep.
The struggle is really good. When we get complacent, when we lay off, then we start immediately rusting.
Yeah.
We start immediately decaying. Mentally, physically, we start decaying. As long as we keep mashing the gas pedal and saying, I need to be here, I need to do this, I need to do more, I'm hungry, I want to increase. And I don't necessarily mean money, I mean life goals.
Yep.
That can be helping more people. That can be you know, getting a horse to this level. Actually, my youngest son, Trent, who is a firebrand, both of my boys are very much like me, but they're very much like me in different ways. And Trent is very, very similar to my dad. And so, you know, he thinks it, he does it. And he just, right now. And so he came to me the other day and he was like, Dad, I just have to tell you this. You need to get competitive on a horse again. You need to be out competing. You've become complacent in your horsemanship. You're good. Your horsemanship's good enough, and you're teaching a lot of people, and that's great. But you don't feel challenged. And I'm here to tell you, I expect to see you competing horseback in the next year. I said, okay, all right. Challenge offered, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
So I think it's good, you know, to have things like that in our lives.
Absolutely.
And I'm actually pretty excited. We're gonna, him and I are going home. He said this to me about a month ago. But we've got things going at home that we're working on, and when we leave here, we're going back and tidying up some stuff, and we're just gonna start hitting some competitive venues on some cow horses and having fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Ken, I really appreciate you stopping by. I know there's a lot of distractions in this town right now, so I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us.
Oh, hey, it's always fun. I appreciate it.
You bet.